Hi there, this is Tony from pianotone.ca, and this is my review of the Inovus i88 entry-level digital piano. Inovus is a new company based out of Western Canada, and they've just are in the process of releasing their first product, the i88. And they approached me after seeing some of my YouTube reviews on entry-level and intermediate-level digital pianos to do a review on their product. And turns out I'm also in Western Canada, so they were good enough to send me one of their units that I was able to spend about a week or so with to really put it through its paces. I should emphasize that Inovus is not paying me to do this review, so everything you're going to hear in this review is my honest opinion. So let's check out the review. So the Inovus i88 is priced about the same as what I think is its biggest competitor, which is the Alesis Recital Pro. I know a fair bit about the Alesis because I owned that piano for about a year, so I'll be drawing quite a few comparisons between that and the i88 in this review. I'll also draw a couple of quick comparisons between the i88 and the Yamaha P45 or P71, which is Yamaha's entry-level digital piano. That piano does cost about $150 more than the Inovus, so not really apples to apples, but I'll draw a couple of quick comparisons there as well. So the i88 is really packed with features, especially at this price point. There are 88 fully weighted hammer action keys. They're not graded, but they are fully weighted, so it's the same weight across the length of the keyboard. There are 3 levels of touch sensitivity, or you can turn the touch sensitivity off. There's 200 voices, which you can access in a variety of ways, either using the menu or some memory banks or quick access keys. There is chorus and reverb for effects, which you can have on or off, and you can also adjust those to about 8 levels each. For connectivity, there is a 2 1/4-inch headphone jacks in the front of the piano. There's a stereo 1/4-inch line-out jack to connect to external audio, which is awesome. There's a MIDI USB out to connect to tablets, computers, etc. to transmit MIDI data. And there's also legacy MIDI jacks in and out on the back of the piano, which is great if you've got a sequencer or any legacy equipment with the old-fashioned MIDI jacks on it. That's really handy to have. There's a sustain pedal port. It is a proprietary port, but there is a pedal included with the piano, and it's a good quality pedal, so the proprietary port is probably not too big of an issue. And there's also a USB Type A jack for a flash drive in the front of the piano, so you can plug a flash drive in and play along with MP3 files, which is very cool. Now there's a great onboard user interface. There's tons of buttons. There's a display, super easy to change settings and stuff on this piano. There's a metronome. There's 100 rhythms with auto accompaniment that you can use or not use. And a lot of extra features in there as well. There's a couple of different versions of each rhythm, and which are really easily accessible with buttons on the front, so you can switch back and forth quickly. There are fills, there's sync, start, intro, end, all that kind of stuff. So that's very, very well done, actually. There's a separate volume for the rhythm as well, so you can control the rhythm volume relative to the voice that you have that you're using. There's single track recording on board. There's transpose ability. There is layer mode, so you can layer 2 voices, and you can adjust the relative volume between the two. There's a lesson split keyboard mode where you can split the keyboard in half and have the same pitch on each side if you're working with a teacher. And there's also 2 headphone jacks, so that's handy, so you can hear each other play at the same pitch. And there's 15 watts of speaker power. So as I mentioned, the keys on the Inovus i88 are 88 fully weighted hammer action keys, very similar to the keys on the Alesis Recital Pro that I had for about a year. Really enjoyed the keys on the Alesis. They felt reasonably realistic and fun and easy to play. There was a very subtle bit of left and right movement on the keys on the Alesis. Didn't really bother me much, but the Inovus doesn't seem to have that, so they feel just a tiny bit more solid, but again, very easy to play, fun to play, and reasonably realistic. The keys on the Yamaha P45, those are graded hammer action, so they're heavier on the left and lighter on the right, so they feel a tiny bit more realistic than this. That is a big part of the price difference though. And there's also the 3 levels of touch sensitivity, so depending on how you tend to play, if you're used to an acoustic piano with a really heavy feel, you can adjust the keys on the Inovus to react a little bit differently to how you play, to how you like it. Okay, so the voices on the Inovus i88, there's 200 voices on the Inovus. They're done using modeling technology. You can access them in multiple ways. You can use the display screen and scroll through the list, and you can also use memory banks where you can store your favorites and recall them quickly. Or you can look up the number for whatever voice it is you want in the manual and hold down function and hit a number combination on the key bit. For the week that I had it, I tended to just use the menu and the scroll buttons. It worked really, really well very quickly, and it's pretty easy to use that way. There's 4 pianos. There's 2 electric pianos. There's a harpsichord. There's about 5 organs, including a Hammond organ. There's guitar sounds. There's bass sounds. The ex-bass player in me really likes the slap bass sound. There's 4 types of strings, there's multiple pads, and the list goes on. There's a horn section, there's sound effects. There's way too many voices for me to demonstrate all of them, but I'm going to go through just a few of them here in the next video. And all of these voices are going to be demonstrated without having any of the effects turned on, so no chorus, no reverb. So piano voices are a very personal thing. You'll find people saying, I hate Yamaha, I really like the Roland voices, or I hate Roland, I really like the Yamaha voices. Totally personal, depends on what you happen to like. I find the Yamaha voices tend to be fairly bright. The Roland voices tend to be fairly full, more emphasis on the low end. Neither one of them is wrong or right, they're just different. I happen to personally prefer the Roland voices, but that's just my preference. I found a similar comparison between the Inovus piano voice and the Alesis Recital Pro piano voice. I found the Alesis to be a little more like the Roland in terms of being more emphasis on the low end, and the Inovus to be a little bit more bright, kind of like the Yamaha. Other thing to mention regarding the voices is that there's also percussion built into the Inovus, where if you want to actually play percussion instruments using the keys, then you can do that as well. So for effects, the i88 has reverb and chorus. You can have them on or off, and then you can adjust them from level 1 to level 8. So the next video, I'm just going to use the main piano voice and pick a couple of the different levels of the chorus and the reverb and demonstrate those. Okay, so for connectivity, the Inovus really does hit it out of the park. There's virtually every type of connectivity you could possibly want on this piano. There's a traditional USB MIDI out, so you can connect to a computer or tablet or whatever to transmit MIDI data. That's a very common port. Then there's also a legacy MIDI in and out, so you can connect a sequencer, or you can connect to legacy audio equipment that takes the traditional old-fashioned MIDI port. Very handy to have, actually. There's a sustain pedal port. It is proprietary, which kind of surprised me. So instead of being the traditional 1/4-inch port, it's a proprietary port. But that being said, the pedal that comes with the Inovus is actually a pretty good pedal. So because if I was to buy this piano, I wouldn't feel the need to replace this pedal for any reason unless it wasn't working. And it's been working fine for me. So the fact that it's a proprietary port, probably not the end of the world. And in comparison to the pedal that came with my Roland FP30, which is twice the price of this piano, this one definitely needed to be replaced. Just a cheap little plastic pedal. So other connectivity options on this piano. There's a audio out, stereo audio out jack. It's a 1/4-inch to connect to external amplification, PAs, amps, whatever. So that's very handy to have, so you don't have to use a headphone jack. And there's an audio in. And it's also 1/4-inch, and I don't know why most digital piano manufacturers don't include audio ins. You'll find them even on really cheap entry-level keyboards that are borderline toys will have an audio in. So you can play along with YouTube, or if you're taking online lessons or whatever, you can hear that audio source through your piano headphones or speakers. So that's a super handy feature on this. Then on the front, there's two 1/4-inch headphone jacks. It's handy to have two in case you're working with an instructor, so you can each hear what you're playing. Then there's also a USB type A jack on the front. So for a flash drive, you can take a flash drive of MP3 files and plug that into the piano and play along with it. Super, super handy feature. And just to go even more over the top, There's buttons on board the piano for play, pause, rewind, and next to help you navigate the stuff that's on your flash drive. So really, really nice feature. The connectivity doesn't stop there. There's also a Bluetooth audio in, so you can connect to the piano with Bluetooth. So with your phone or whatever, and play along with whatever you're sending to the piano from your phone. The only issue with any of these audio inputs is that the audio in on the back and the Bluetooth audio in, the volumes could do with being a little bit louder. They're perfectly usable and perfectly fine, but I did have to kind of crank the volume on my iPad when I was playing along with YouTube, etc. But again, still perfectly usable. Okay, so for rhythms, there's 100 different rhythms built into the Inovus. There's actually 2 different versions of each rhythm as well. And some really cool features. There's a sync start, so it'll start playing when you start playing. There's an intro and an ending, so you can have like a fill for that. There's also automatic fills as you switch between the 2 different versions of each rhythm. So it's extremely well implemented. These buttons are really easy to get at while you're playing. A lot of other digital pianos do have rhythms built in, but they can be a little clunky to actually work with. So they're okay for practicing, but you could never really make it sound good for performance. This one you can kind of get away with that with the fact that the buttons are so easy to get at. So in the upcoming video, I'm going to play a little quick song where I'm going to use both different versions of one of the rhythms and switch back and forth, so you can hear fills in between. And you're also going to hear the sync start and the intro and the ending. So let's check that out. So there's also accompaniment with the Inovus that you can use with rhythms, or you can just leave the accompaniment off if you want. And there's, just like with the rhythms, there's 2 different versions for each rhythm. And just like with the rhythms, when you do a fill, as you switch back and forth between the 2 different types of the rhythm, there's also a different version of an accompaniment fill that goes along with it as well. And there's also accompaniment intros and endings. So really, really well done. This is a great tool for somebody that wants to learn how to play lead sheets, for example, where you're playing chords with your left hand and the melody with your right hand. Because what you can do is you can start off by just playing a single finger chord in the left hand, and you'll get a major chord when you do that. And then you can gradually work up towards playing actual full chords in your left hand, and at which point the piano is going to recognize that and react to it. So let's check that out in this quick little video. So some of the other features on the Inovus, there's a metronome. I'm not going to bother demonstrating that, but it's a standard metronome. You can change the tempo and change the time signatures, so you hear a chime on different beats. There is a single track recording built in on board as well. You can't export that to anything, but you can just record a quick recording of yourself, including the rhythms or accompaniment, if you don't want to bother hooking up something to do a fancier recording, just if you want to capture something that you're playing. You can transpose, which is great for beginning pianists like me. There's also a layer mode where you can layer two voices, one over the other, and you can also adjust the relative volume between the two. And there's a lesson split mode where you split the piano in half and you get the same pitch on each side. You can actually have different voices on each side as well when you do that, but I'm not sure you would ever do that in a lesson environment. You'd probably just be sticking with the piano voice. And there's also a bunch of demo songs that you can listen to as well and play along with. Okay, so the other choices. Well, as I mentioned, the big competitor for the Inovus is really the Inovus Recital Pro. Both pianos have fully weighted but not graded hammer action keys. Both are nice to play. The Inovus also actually adds a matte finish on the black keys that the Inovus doesn't have, which is a nice feature. It helps you keep your fingers from slipping a little bit. Voice quality on both of them is pretty comparable. They're both decent quality for the price. The piano and strings voices on the Inovus would be probably its best voices in my opinion, and definitely comparable to the ones on the Inovus. The rest of the voices on the Inovus, the organs in particular, I think are probably a little bit better than the ones on the Inovus. Both pianos actually have a great user interface. They both have displays, lots of buttons. It's really easy to change between different settings and that type of thing. They both have dedicated audio out ports, which is super handy for connecting to external audio equipment, so you don't have to use a headphone jack for that. Both have a basic onboard recording interface, so that you can do a quick recording of something, and both pianos have USB and MIDI out, which is a pretty standard feature nowadays to connect to tablets or computers to record MIDI data. Extra features that the Inovus Recital Pro has that the Inovus does not have. It has a split function where you can have one voice in the left and one voice in the right. With my Inovus, I would often be playing bass in the left hand and piano on the right. Bluesy and jazzy stuff, which is tons of fun. The Inovus doesn't have that. You can split the keyboard, but you get the same pitch on either side. So it's not really the same thing. The Inovus speakers are a little bit more powerful at 20 watts instead of 15, and the Inovus's brand has been around for decades, and Inovus is new on the market. Now, extra features on the Inovus, it comes with a pedal, and it's a decent quality pedal. The Inovus doesn't come with one. There's an audio import, which a lot of digital pianos don't have. Super handy to be able to play along with something. There's also a Bluetooth import, same functionality, just wireless. Also awesome, there's the USB flash drive port where you can play along with MP3 files, which is also a super handy feature. There's 200 voices versus 12 on the Inovus, and the Inovus doesn't have rhythms or auto-accompaniment. And then the Yamaha P45 or P71, Yamaha's entry-level digital piano. It is, as I mentioned before, about $150 US more expensive, so not really apples to apples. The sound engine on the Yamaha is going to be a bit of a higher quality than the Inovus or the Inovus. And the key bit is graded, which also adds a little bit more to the realism. But beyond that, the Yamaha P45 is a very feature-free kind of a piano. It doesn't have audio outputs. It has no kind of audio input. The user interface is virtually completely controlled by holding down function and looking up in the manual which key to press to change a setting. There's like virtually no buttons on the top of that keyboard. It does have an app that can make that a little bit easier, but if you don't have the app around, then it can be a little bit harder to control. It also doesn't have rhythms or auto accompaniment or any of those kinds of features, and it has nowhere near the same number of voices either. So the only reason I think you would want to consider going to something like the P45 would be if you're extremely serious about learning classical piano, you're going to be taking piano lessons with a teacher on an acoustic piano, and that graded weighting of the keys is really super important to you, then that might be one reason to consider spending the extra money on that. So the verdict on the Inovus i88. I think this is a really good entry-level digital piano option. It's so packed with so many different features that it really ticks a lot of the boxes for, whether you're a beginning pianist or an experienced pianist that is looking for an inexpensive digital piano that can do a lot of different things. If you're interested in classical music, it's got fully weighted keys, a metronome, and pretty decent piano sound. If you are looking to be able to play modern songs, which is what I do, it's got rhythms built in that are really easy to use and well done, lots of voices. If you are looking to learn how to play lead sheets, where you play chords in your left hand and melody in your right, it has the accompaniment features that are really good for learning, where you can start off by just playing single finger chords in your left hand and work up towards playing fully fingered chords. And it's for any of those types of interests. There's 200 voices, there's all the connectivity options that are available. So there's also at the time that I made this video, they were offering a subscription to the Piano Academy app as well. I think it's for 2 months. So there really aren't many features that the i88 doesn't have, but just a couple of them that I do want to mention is the split keyboard functionality, where you can play one voice in your left hand and one voice in your right hand. Would be a nice addition. I like to play bass in the left and piano in the right sometimes. A few more piano sounds would be a nice addition as well. And I mean, graded hammer action keys would be great, but that's going to bump the price up significantly. So with all that in mind, I would definitely recommend considering the Inovus i88 as a digital piano purchase if it meets your needs and it's in your budget. And hope that helps you out. And you can check out my links below the video if you like to check the prices on the Inovus and on the Inovus Recital Pro and on the Yamaha P45. And thanks a bunch, and happy piano shopping.